On this episode of Car Rant, we're installing a new intake system on the IS300 and changing out the spark plugs. So, to showcase the car a little bit, it does have the 2J. I found out that in Japan, these actually have the small beans motor. But in order to change out our spark plugs, we're gonna have to take off the intake system anyway. I have bought a new intake system. Ishmael's on his way with it, which is why we're just gonna go ahead and just start sending it. Your suggestion.
Just to give you guys a quick summary, I'm sure Nick knows this, but you're gonna pull off your strut bar if you have one, disconnect all your little odds and ends, and then literally just unbolt it from here. Excuse me. Unbolt it from here, leave everything else connected, and lift it straight off. Don't make it any more complicated than it's got to be. The bigger the unit that you can pull up, better, because then that's less parts you got to put back together.
Exactly. So we've talked about trying to make our job a little easier. It's pulling things apart. I mean, obviously, huge gaping hole here now, just from where the original piece was. But now we're trying to figure out how to very carefully remove the throttle body and part of the intake manifold, because it's set up a little wonky. I mean, have you ever seen a 3-part intake?
Mm-hmm. it's called an RB.
Oh, this guy. So we got the engine cover off. It was pretty straightforward. It was just 4 hex nut type things that were holding it on. One here on either side and one towards the throttle body right there. Once we pulled this off, it literally just came straight up. But we wanted to point something out too. It looks like someone actually went through and upgraded the electrical system on this car, because those are NGK wires. As far as I'm aware, they didn't come with NGK wires, so kind of excited to see some quality parts on this car. But we will need to pull up, obviously, the throttle body at least to get into the rest of it and see what's going on. That way we can actually start taking these plugs out and see the condition of them. We got an intake from DC Sports. It's nothing crazy. It's just a very simple metallic piece of pipe with its own arms to help stabilize it in different ways. It's gonna be nice and easy to put in. But the main thing is it comes with new hoses, which means we might be able to replace some of our damaged ones with the good ones off of the old intake box and just slap it all together. All right, so we've got the throttle body and this removed. There's a lot of plugs, a lot of connections. There's also a coolant line. So make sure you kind of like angle that up and away from things, because, you know, electrical systems don't like to be wet. Like, there's a lot of just interesting cables going on. These are new cables I've seen, which I'm really excited for that, because that means that someone did this recently. But this car is also set up for batch fire, which is normal because this is straight 6. So there are plugs that lead to either side. So we're gonna have to go through and carefully work around this wiring setup. It's wonky, but it is what it is. Now we're gonna carefully just start removing our plugs, because these are very straightforward. There's like a single bolt holding it there. There's a clip here. Yeah, it's gonna be the easy part of the job. So we disconnected the electrical, set it to the side. Rest in peace, clip. We pulled cylinder 3 just to kind of look, and like this is coated in some cooked, like seriously cooked coolant, which means that there was a leak. A very foolish technician did not bother to check to see if anything got in there, which is probably why we have a bad spark plug giving us problems and throwing the check engine light that we've got, which is an evap leak, which is coolant draining straight onto the cylinders. Because if I can get this one off, which I don't think I will be without unbolting it, I don't know if you can see very well in there, but there's a lot of residue just sitting in this one that is not found in these other ones. So that's definitely where our problem came from. We're just gonna have to be very careful about cleaning it out and not leaving any other residues in there. I want to say 10 mils to remove those. What do you think? 10s?
10s or 12s.
10s or 12s. Yeah, they're pretty straightforward to remove those particular packs, because those are, again, the batch fired setup. So yeah, let's go ahead and try and get those off. So we've only started with cylinders 1 and 2 and already are seeing problems. Oil on the second spark plug. This one has some residue on it as well from the first one. So I'm glad we're gonna be able to go in here and try and clean that out. You can pull out the old plugs and try to redeem what's in there, but yeah, I'm really glad we're doing this now, because that was a problem. They did great on the coil packs. They did not do great on actual, like, getting it set up for fresh electricity. So this is cylinder 1's spark plug. If you can see it, it's an NGK. It's actually relatively nice. It's not in bad shape. Definitely a little burned off, but nothing major. However, that's this. This is the Denso part that we picked up. We picked up the nice Iridium Denso tips. That has a bit more of a tip to it. But one significant thing wrong with these, there's not a single bit of anti-seize on there whatsoever. This also wasn't seated all the way, which is why there was oil all up on top of this. It wasn't a good thing. Whoever worked on this car last should be fired, because they almost blew this car up. I'm just saying, they did not do a good job. As someone who's worked on cars, he agrees. It was not well done. This is time to put the new one in. Cylinder 2, look at all the oil. I know you can see it on there. This thing was not hardly even in there, because this came out with just a little, and that was it. There was no effort. There was no trying to undo Ian's level of tightness. This was barely on there. Like a small child just like threw it in there and just said, eh, that works, and that was it. Cylinder 3. Look at the oil just sitting on the outside of this, right? Let's see, there it goes. That should not be. This is definitely a burned out plug, because look at the gap. The gap on that is really, really wide. The tip is burned off tremendously. There's oil coating all of the threads. This is a sign of someone just not doing their job at all. That's why I'm showing you every single cylinder, to prove a point that you need to do this yourself. Because then there is no room for error, because you'll have done it right. You know what I'm saying? You won't just like, okay, let's just slap it together, get it done. Because, and Ian, you can prove the point. It took us a long time just to get this intake manifold off to do the job. So my guess is someone got to this stage and was like, just throw it together, get it done, get it out of the shop. Because the shop hours, it's taking time. Never take the short route when doing electrical. Cylinder 4, like I said, it's a lot of oil, and it shouldn't be up here. Something I figured would definitely help you guys out at home would be to just kind of muscle that hose over. It's pretty malleable, it's pretty easy to bend out of place. So just kind of stick it back there behind the other end of the cam case over there. Now we can get to that last bolt. Once that's bent back out of place, that'll be like the last of the spark plugs that we have to change out. I'll replace the front cover, get the electrical on obviously first, and then once Ian gets back, we're going to try and put all of that back together with some fresh hoses, since the last ones all got cracked and destroyed. So he's going to go get some of that, and then we can put it all back together and possibly start it with the new intake system. I moved into the garage for this one, so I want to show this one off. This is cylinder 5. I just went over the edge of the actual teeth on this and found that there is some kind of gritty particulate on the inside of it, which is not a good sign. The top of it is pretty burnt, not a clean spark whatsoever. Pulling this off, this one's not as like oil soaked, but you can definitely tell like a little burn line is definitely the result of well, a well-used spark plug, but probably one that burned hotter or harder than others. So it is what it is. Thankfully, like I said, we have these fresh ones going in. This should cure our problems. Cylinder 6, also coated in oil, which is not supposed to be that way. It definitely has some oil ring on the outside of it. It's just sad because like these are really nice NGKs, and this one looks pretty much new. Yet, like, it's so coated in oil that my glove is shiny and it's supposed to be matte. You know what I'm saying? So, definitely indicative of a very, very poorly done job, which looks like it may have misfired more than once and more than a few times at probably decent RPMs. It's sad to see that happen to this car. I'm not hating on the previous owner with this, and I also want to emphasize something that, like, if you're gonna change the intake system on your IS and keep it NA, or even if you go to boost it, do change your spark plugs at the same time, just because A, it's easier to do it when there's nothing blocking it like we saw earlier, and B, it's just a good way to check the health of your motor by just seeing how it's burning the fuel and air that's going into it by making sure that all the components that are in it are fresh, are new, are ready to roll. It's just a good idea, because like I said, this is coated in oil and it shouldn't be, and that's telling me that there might be other issues down the road with this engine. So now that all of the spark plugs have been replaced, torqued to spec, and coated with some anti-seize around the outside of the threads, we can now start putting things back together. I've already plugged up the wires, I've replaced the front part of the cover. Now we're just waiting on Ian and Chris to come back with some fresh lines so that we can start plumbing things back together and actually get to the intake side of this job.
So here's what we're doing. Where's that one piece that I chucked? So when you take your throttle body off, you'll notice this wonderful bracket. We actually kind of did some modifications here. There's a smaller bracket for a smaller vacuum line right here. We cut that off and we looped that because, quite frankly, that'll just get pushed down and it won't do anything. And we're not even going to put this back on because this just adds more work to your workload. So work smarter, not harder. Toss that. We're going to take our hose here, and got like 3 feet of it, so we have more than enough. We pulled the we pulled the hose off this nipple. There is this plastic piece which we did break, or I broke by accident. It's hollow. There's nothing in it. Why it's there, I have no idea. Anyway, so what we're gonna do is we're basically bypassing that. We're gonna run this straight to this nipple, and then from here we'll run another length of hose. There's you can't see it right here. Well, maybe you can, but there's another nipple up here, and this will loop up to this nipple, and you'll be set. Which means, so the next time you go to take this off, you don't have to unbolt anything down here. You don't have to mess with anything down here. You just pull your top hose off and you're good to go.
We've got the coolant line plugged in. We have the bottom neck open. Oh wow, there we go. We have the neck open so that when we start the car, it can breathe because there's air in the line now. Everything's plumbed up. Everything's bolted tight. And now it's time to actually do what most of you are probably here to see, and that's the actual putting together of this intake pipe. Hey, you did. So, got it all plumbed together. Word of the wise, attach your filter before you put it in. Like, actually bolt it all together, because it's a little tight down there. It's kind of hard to fit things. So make sure you put that on first. We've got our first breather line already plumbed up. We're good to go there. This is all bolted in now. It's tightened down there. We're just getting this last bit of hose. Ours is pretty roached. It's snapped pretty easily. It is a metal filled line, so we kind of have to make it all fit within that first gapped area on the end. So we're taking some of the hose that DC Sports gave us, which I think, did you just get it? Oh, really close. It's very flexible, which is good news for us because that means we can actually plumb it on there fairly easily. If we really tried, we might be able to fit the other end on to the actual crankcase on that side, but it is what it is. Once we get this on, we'll put the battery on, start it up, and see what it sounds like for the first time. So we got it all bolted together. I think the ECM kind of learned it. It definitely sounds way better, way healthier, way cleaner. I actually have some pull now. We'll just have to go in there with the computer to clear the code and feel it out from there. After just driving the IS for a good couple miles and just getting in it, it sounds so much better. Realistically, air intakes don't add a lot of power. Like, you have to really tune for it and things like that, but it feels a little bit torquier because it's now getting actual air in it. So that could be just the forgotten power that was always there. You just couldn't get it because of the bad air filter that was on the car and the bad spark job that was in it to begin with. But it just feels like the car came alive. The noise is awesome. Sounds incredible. I might see if I can get the boys to give me some flyby footage of it. But it sounds and feels so much better. Again, if you're trying to do this at home, this is something that you can do on your own. Just be very cautious and careful about how you do certain things to your engine. As always, you do something wrong, that could cost you your engine. But otherwise, thank you guys for watching. God bless y'all, and we'll see you next time. Peace.